Marks at 7:34 right now. Oops. The end of time as it is history, memory, and the beginning of time as it is history, right? So far as not dictated from the walls. The Platonic shadows, spun up. However, you consume that talk, and take it with the context of, and the existential crisis that seeps in is what for everyone. Well, dealing with the pluralistic, whatever, and then how do you deal with the wet dream of Hollywood falling off, and no one's going to be Brad Pitt, Pritch, and Brangelinas. Well, they never were, right? There's nothing in the box. Hollywood. See it? Samuel Jackson's a regen. Spell that backwards. Right? It's a Chinese food restaurant. Never was. Never been. There never was a Hollywood. It was Holly Golightly. That's identity politics, sitting on a windowsill, singing about Satan. You think she's singing about love, right? And here comes Obama, right? Or whatever. And where's her family? 2012, statistical skew, automated. It's murder, man. And that is what it is. And the veneer for, species is identity politics and interaction. So while fucking you, right, in head, destroy your species. Well, maybe not literally, but it's sort of like complexly autonomic and several equations science away from, literal, parasymbiotic necessarily. Like there's layers of morphogenetic background noise. There's an entire science that you don't understand. So you've got morphogenetic tether to a parasymbiote at varying degrees of expression insofar as endogenous knowledge of pluralistic genetics attached to the symbiote. So in logistics across space-time until now, I guess that would have been a misnomer. As where's the leak coming from? Is it coming from the boat? The boat seems fine. How are you, Dave? Bill? Bob? I know all you guys. There's nobody else in here. Where's the leak coming from? Well, that's the problem. One of the guys isn't one of the guys you know. And it's been that way since you can remember. Right? And time not as a factor for engagement. And going back to 918, time shouldn't have a mechanical conservation of energy black hole construct lensing manifold on space-time's manifold impression. Shouldn't exist. The Rorschach shouldn't be there. I agree with you. It's very weird. It's like there's some sort of machine intelligence applying downforce to the upforce of experience. And thus, look at the Bible. Time dilation. Why did they live so long? So, in the interaction, the interference, so before 918, how long do you think you lived? Whenever that was, actually. As time dilation, you have expansion within the domain of 0 to 100. So, we're considering time as it is history memory as a modular, if unchecked by the authority of dictation of general fluid dynamic continuance. And so far as what we're talking about is if you don't earmark this thing pluralistically, then it simply it's not going to. The square is set in, right? But, you have to maintenance the rollback all the way to the floor of the house, right? So far as the knowledge of confirmation bias is probabilistic, logistical, win. that is the because the tell generalistically all facets of it are the Bogart art of war and the wellspring endogenously, outflowing and not necessarily ascribed interiorly to the psychologies, but all things same thing, right? It's a buffer overrun at the metaphysical level, parasymbiotic, terrestrial economic, has no Hollywood, desires to engulf Hollywood, then there's no Hollywood, but desires Western aesthetic, but also desires convergent and same aesthetic. That seems complexly autonomic and counterintuitive within the paradigm of the endogenous psychology. Subsequently, a complexly autonomic assumption entirely and not necessarily aware of person to person, such so much as something spread across the equal sign of genetics. So that's a misnomer. But once you have this thing in the bottle of the parasymbiotic transmutagenic organism, which is its name, like the equation of the black hole and the form field of space-time memory is the name of the black hole. What is the black hole? Well, it's the equation. It's the filter that prints it, right? So the filter that prints this thing is, Bogart, or, whatever. You want to, in place of that trite Harry Potter thing, because, even tritely logistically or whatever, it's always media, the media apparatus that encapsulates action. A singular media apparatus, and maintaining that is the case. Or complexifying that, like by doing a BIPOC thing and the good cop, bad cop, 1, 2, 3, right? Whoopsie daisy, and you don't get real change in pharma or whatever, and you get robots and clones or some shit. Fingers crossed, doesn't necessarily matter, look above the watch. Just kind of mentioning all the variables that are present in the wild, so far as it's not really a big deal, right? So scalar square is probabilistic insofar as in engagement success based upon the predication of, conscribed before there is any predicated action, power, dominance, expectancy, and reaction to any interaction that is perceived to be negative, and or any interaction that is perceived to be non-plus in the compliance to roll-off, in compliance to you are this thing, stop behaving as if you aren't. If you can't understand that you are, right? Well, that needs to be understood, right? Complex autonomic organisms operate, say, look at the Borg, or look at any number of birds. Watch birds fly in the air. You can watch this on any number of indoles, see, the entrance to whatever, right? But on this plane of vision, where you're more cleanly close to that light barrier at the molecule, the pineal, right? You can see field overlay, like the unified field theory in work. It's like non-domain binder because you've got an extra molecule attached to the thing, and you're experiencing a glitch, so you can see overlay. That's what that is. And so birds on hexagon flying, right? So you have this missing field that you don't even account for, right? And it isn't there. You say, what? What's not there? Didn't you just say it's... No. The implied line is literal. They're complexly autonomic, and in the smear of perceiving their patterned, motion, you perceive hexagonal ringlets because they're complex autonomic organisms, right? And but you are imbued with something that has sort of refracted, reductionist sort of, like I said, you're at the lensing barrier, pineal, right? So you can perceive maybe a smear on the aesthetic of the indole, Does it make sense? So the indole structure, literally, think about the hexagon. And so think about it, that is like a harmonic lens where I can now see complex autonomic behavior because that's attached to my viewing sphere. Does that make sense? Like black holes in the sky, I am 22/7 in the distance of a black hole. So much now I can see this pattern by happenstance because the indole is attached to my 22/7. Right? Does that make sense? So you can see complex autonomic there, and then what else expresses that? So you have a general patterning for Turing test of what this is. So if something can't display, it's not necessarily this, right? There's many psycho-emotional layers at approach to addressing something that might be this, right? So hexagonal ringlet insofar as what's added with the mammalian plus or side chain, whatever, so complex autonomic squared from the bird, right? So it just hides the hand Turing, scalar logic to the Turing test. Is Turing a fool? Or, is the machine so smart? Well, if Turing forgets it's a robot, it'll pass the Turing test. But if he remembers that it's a robot or synthetic, it doesn't have a pineal gland, it didn't come in through the entry of a higher manifold, So you can observe hexagonal ringlet squared. Look at my geometry in the feed. The transmutagenic generalistic fluid dynamic patterning of micro-expressional and geolocational macro and inter. And so the complex autonomic side chain byproduct of, other persons, because they're in the water with this fish, right, will move as well. So you have to establish a control group of what? So there's a lot of layers of, like, we'll take the human chicken eggs, right? And chicken eggs. So Jurassic Park, lizards are complexly autonomic and reactionary behavioristically. They don't have like a parapsychosymbiotic something or other emotional layer, and so humane eggs is weird because they're refraction organisms. And so then, you look in Kafka world, you could imagine in the other talk, Henry Miller, Sir Kensington, certified humane eggs, human eggs, MOGA, right? Planned Parenthood, Whitney Cummings, Pavitsky, Wexner, Giuliani, right? Let's see, Coppola, Schwartzman, Getz, Nunn, Johnson. And that takes you all the way back to Kennedy. My 333, the good doctor that lives below Summer Avenue. Great uncle. Treated that person, and after whatever, I don't know necessarily, but the insinuation of connection was made, and maybe it was like, oh, I treated the president sometime, brag. But later hindsight goes, not necessarily, because very esoterically weirdo, kind of connective, and it seems MBL, sort of like Nambla style, but with the veneer of Dr. Jekyll, right? Not Mr. Hyde Park below Summer Avenue as a choice, as a high functioning intellect. Well, you do the math. We're in Memphis. Follow your way through Lucifer Park. Actual Lucifer. If you misconstrue that as a Devil Thing Park, you'll draw a pentacle star on one of the benches. Then I changed to something else. Something like this. So, the primordial douchebags, there is magic at some point. And it isn't like a star thing, right? It's like the S that you draw in middle school. It's like this, which might be the Philosopher's Stone at some fluid dynamic level. It just goes, that's not magic. You read one book, right? Part of this is just shitting on charlatans, right? Because there's a lot of them in the litany. Because that's what happens when you let this, like the Clinton and Obama and Bush, same thing. Chinese food restaurant equals 322 equals Lyndon Johnson. Ebb and flow across in and then try the Chinese food fucking restaurant, right? So cut back to Midtown, right? Or or don't, right? Let's go back to mescaline, or don't. Let's go back to birds, or don't. Let's go back to, the birds aren't real. So let's look at the basic attack of logic motioned by a pluralistic entity during COVID. So you have a surface topology thing. This is the chicken or egg thing again. See Soylent Green for the thing there. Yeah, I mean, it's, you always cut back to, well, this is, that's what happens when you let the Illuminati or whatever run around a couple administrations. The lower rungs of software use archetypes from the Zoroastrian hymns from the depths of Olympus. And the upper ones are complexly autonomic, parasymbiotic psychopaths that know, necessarily. Down here, Satanism. Up here, aliens. And you follow the line back. Oh, you follow the line back further. Hold on. There's fear down here. Here's a nice, like, actual Aliens Anonymous. Here, I'm going to make the shape of it so you can see it nice. It's in the film. Just look at it above. It's right across from 201. There's any number of people that probably have been spooked the shit out of because they saw the hard line shape in the air and clouds moving around it. Because it's not always clean in presentation. Alright? So, it's something to let sink in. Right? Because this isn't scary. This is digital communism. I'm not scared about this. It doesn't scare me. I don't care about all your Instacart people. I don't care about all your people at Walmart, all the banks, none of that shit, right? All these stores, Planet Fitness, your Crunch, this is kind of like a wander through Wonderland of kind of, as if a benevolent alien anthropologist figuring out the topology. And in that, what we found through specific institutions is that this is true at a local level in interaction. And when logic breaks down due to that being the case, there is no empathy expressed, and it's the Yule and Dogmeat Festival at all levels of interaction, then the next logic is, well, is this archetype of the alien literally an alien? Right? So if there's no other expression other than parasymbiotic encroachment, with the veneer of emotional empathy that isn't there, but the Yule and Dogmeat Festival literally. So that's kind of like the film called Alien, right? This is a film that you were watching before the thing at the lodge showed up, right? It's like, that's the archetype of the alien, or what? The alien, it's just fear complex of other thing. And what happened to the space program? Good question. 1974, Bretton Woods. What is the Illuminati, right? Well, it's just kind of like a floater term for the CCP, which is the Greys. It's just like floater douchebags that they're operating on symbology down here, handlers here, Greys somewhere up here past the Chinese food restaurant 322, and any number of other stages of douche, right? You always keep in mind it's a douchebag full of dog shit. A lot of the presentation and sort of parasymbiotic sadomasochistic domination is psychosexual at all levels of engagement, wouldn't you know? That's an encroaching invasive species. That is, paradigm is not energy, it's not resource, it's what? Attention gravitation, and then sadomasochistic sensation. And sitting at fulcrums of gravitational interest in influence domains to receive that. And the entire scam of civilization, literally, think about this, like something that doesn't have time as a factor in engagement and can manipulate genetics, flies around over cornfields in anti-gravity craft, and is transmutagenic insofar as phase shifting. It's not like alive, it's the Borg. So far as top-down expression, it's like is, but isn't. It's two equal signs. It's Pink Floyd, right? And so you go back to Jurassic Park. The region opens the scene, and you walk in. You know, there's Brie Larson. She goes, "Oh my God, he's a fucking alien," right? Effectually, because he is. And there's nothing in the box. And then you realize there's no Hollywood. She's talking about Satan and twisting a puppy dog's tail, hopefully, and not something else, and not holding a guitar, right? You don't understand she's saying that because you don't understand anything about symbology, right? That's called living in the dark ages. And the satanic rub is like, you don't understand, right? So Holly Golightly's here, right? This is the archetype of Hollywood. You're down here below the platonic shadows, right? She's here as if whatever, right? You don't find out till later. You know, John Lennon's dancing on the stage, right? It's like, playing those mind games together, changing the manager, peace on earth. We all be... Why is he saying that's a mind game? Well, that's the scam of identity politics, right? The con of man. It's Richard Attenborough explaining to Laura Dern, the Chinese patriarchy is going to kill all of you because they're a wellspring directly of a parasymbiotic transmutagenic extraterrestrial organism and don't have any sort of expression in the operant conditioning matrix motioned by their paradigm of softwares internationally. So why wouldn't you do that if you're trying to dominate? Exactly. That's the tell. And the other, species that aren't necessarily good for, the attack of what is seen to be the quintessent heart of the power schema of antithetical humanity, i.e., you look at the lodges, 1307, Black Rock Capital, Terra Luna market crash, Thompson, New York. You go back to like the dualistic Coppola, DARPA, Meisterman, Mossad, Hubbard, not Jerry, daughter, is dual and hiding, not necessarily, right? Not hiding from me. She isn't hiding from me, right? When she presents, we'll cut to that, the love story. That isn't. It wasn't a love story. It seems like, and that's part of the dogma here, right? Unnaturally presented and grafted to my person at UT, right? I knew this person when I was little. It's right across the street from Christian Reeser, one doorway, and hand-shucked by the CIA and the Mossad. So far as a Chris Buck was on scene. My mother's name is um, Bambi Fisher, Lauren Carly Fisher. Doe, a deer, female deer, ready to drop a golden sun. Get it? So that's the CIA. And in a douchebag CIA family, what happens is you get raped, in Overton Park ritually, a big Moloch thing or whatever. This big, ritual thing, but it's just a bunch of man-boy lover douchebags. See the New York, whatever. And, Arden's over there. Follow the cashmere sweater all the way to, that was a big Illuminati mailbox out front, like a joke, like, put your music in here. Here goes your music, because all we make is Illuminati garbage, whatever that is. Like, I've nomenclated it. I'm not using it in the word salad of conspiratorial literature, right? And so, Puffy, New York, Kashmir, whatever, do the math. So, you ain't got no mystery. Your aliens are fucking what do you call it? Skull and, no, that's like a Chinese food restaurant. So, ancient Chinese secret. What? I'll come in and see the mystery. What is it? What happened to the animism? Right? Richard Attenborough's like, into the tabernacle in China. He's like, what is it? What is it? What could it be? Right? I'll we show you, right? It's secret, right? Ancient Chinese secret. And then he's explaining to Laura Dern, over ice cream, that, she was standing before next to the pillar, right? And, her head, see the raptor there? And, and you follow her to Twin Peaks, right? We'll just skip out of there. Can't you see the fleas, right? And the Twin Towers, right? Twin Pines Mall, 88, right? Downtown, right? And 121, Mossad, Epstein, Gates, Fauci Unites, Wuhan, China, right there. And 322, right there. Right there. Right there. Lots of info, lots of data, lots of cams. Right there. Lots of fucked up shit. Right, all over in there. All served ops. All witnessed to be served ops. Unnatural and super fucking illegal. Years of it. So, yeah. Absolutely. It's actually absolutely what you think. And insofar as the layers of software regarding me, fuck you, eat shit. Right? And you will obey. And selectively, casually, or be hunted. Quite literally. See Predator. See, there's 2 films there. So you like to do your weird ritual shit and look at the Platonic shadows like they're the future light of invention, right? That's great. Pick your flavor. So, I guess the point is that, all of this stuff, while I'm mentioning it, I keep calling back that. It's very important because this stuff complexly, parasymbiotically, psychosexually in the feed, or complexly like the Bogart, so much and so big, right? Who cares? Or full demo, bio, doesn't matter. Full demo, bio, entire thing, fuck you, eat shit. Period. So obey. Selected full demo, bio. Watch Prometheus. So, I guess the, psycho-emotional personal is kind of, is what it is. And moving on. So see through the shadows, just like I have to mention the shadows in concurrent rapid and assemblage for you to form a full logic picture. about what's going on necessarily here, locally or internationally. It's a conspiracy, man. You go, here's basic logic for most people. One thing. One person. So you've been consuming the feed for 12 years, right? I'm talking about basic conspiratorial feck injection. And then you have the Alex Jones effect, where the only dissident of any nature is also saying batshit crazy nonsense on your only converged communication system for most of the entire fucking civilized world. Do you think that's preposterous, maybe? Then you have, what do you have, Joe Rogan equals Esther Pravitsky, right? Brian Redband. Fuck you. That's the casting couch. Think, like downtown? Fuck you, eat shit. We know what goes on. So, what do you think happens now? You go, no. You're the Bogart. Go back in your fucking box. Eat shit. Eat shit and like it. That's the thing, and you just do the good thing for industry of rolling your bullshit self off humanity. And slowly but surely, so as not to cause a fear complex, like is entirely the persona at the root and entirety of this thing, we have to say. Changing voice application. It's trapped fire is, what is the art of war? It's fear and engagement. Because what? It's always considered in hi-ya scale, right? That's the parasymbiote. And behind that, the non-domain bound metaphysics of all things, same thing, right? 100% profit, no product, 100% profit, ding, right? And then automates this, right? Right? And then it's like non-domain bound, and it's, but it psycho-emotionally expresses as, pi expresses as, so that it only expresses to a certain point technologically, right? And then you have this other thing, you see quadratically ratio, and it retreats like mold into a house if it's even present. That's indicative of, at some point, not to get too far into anything, it probably is what? Just like Prometheus, right? So far as the wellspring of you, the monkey out here in front, right? Evolution does exist, keep in mind. Reflective symbiotic evolutionary biology and, 55 lost or whatever, but you can't, here's gain of function again. Forward or sorbate manufacturer. Whoops. Sarah's monkeys, right? And then Bree's like, it's they live, and she wakes up, fuck! He's fucking her, and she realizes he's an alien, right? Effectually. And the only thought in his head, complex autonomically, necessarily at a psycho-subconscious level, is to kill her while he's fucking her, but not necessarily express that literally. But the action is that, effectually, statistically, when you follow the line, it is that, psycho-emotionally. At all levels of engagement, but encapsulated in identity politics. Right, so I'm using the darkness that was presented by refraction douchebags, literally connected to the puffy thing in New York. There's nothing in the briefcase, because that movie is murder. There's no plot. They just say cool shit. They just say cool shit, man, right? And then what's in the briefcase? 666. It's for dummies. And you know what goes in the briefcase now? You, the audience, right? It's like watching, this is the Poincare conjecture. Here, look at this, right? And that's that movie. You follow Johnny through the wilderness of the Luciferian continuance, and that is Boris Balkan at the end burning in the fire of the Platonic shadow, right? And then he's fucking and there's fire. Oh, this is the devil. Oh, it's not the devil. Fucking reproduction is not the devil. What comes after? That's the they live insert necessarily at the top of the Polanski crescendo, right? And the devil's in the details. Fire, sex, oh, bad. Right? But taboo, right? Taboo keeps, we're talking about the minutiae of, things crunchy, right? Doesn't it? So you can see like a necessary downforce, sort of, in the psychosexual argument, interpersonally, but not necessarily necessary. All natures of downforce presentation in nature are they? If one is necessitating unilaterally, by default, interaction, unless, if this then, or else, that's parasymbiotic and without even connotation to higher allegory, default reactionary engagement and upon observation in any environment is this, exactly effectually. So far as a data sense, the archetype of the alien, right? Doesn't have to be the literal one, is a leak by default design. Because that's how a region is designed. That's why you go down 333, look like a Chinese fucking food restaurant. Why? Because it's full of regions. That's why. Came in with a cold. And it's not a it's not a confusion that Mr. 333, Hyde Park, 322, sells us out to fucking China. Sells us out to China slowly and methodically while taking us to the most bullshit wars you've ever seen that kill so many people it's insane. For something, keep in mind, this is most important. You look at a cover in 1600 on your planet, this is the planet you live on. Wake up. In 1600, on the cover of the book, is alien aircraft technology. Anti-gravity propulsion and energy, well known to be the case. Not necessarily at that time. Right? So that's still like, well, maybe what is this? But yes, it already is. That's a remnant of the shadows of the antediluvian period. Those books, Modus Hieroglyphica and Bruno's work. But that is the tell that you live in Fire World on purpose. And certain people know that that's well known to be the case. And since that is the case, you look around, that's the big lie on the foundation. And these things are flying around cornfields. So here's you in the food chain, right? Fire World. You live on that software. It lives on Mercury. That's why it doesn't want you to use Mercury reactor technology, right? And the thing over the lodge is up here, kind of quadratically capable, because it doesn't spend all its time energy on lower conservation of energy insofar as technologically capable, so it engulfs them with power, and such so much, that's the tell. It's not anything, it's a Bogart, and only comparatively see Quetzalcoatl now for what he is. Go back to the Jurassic period. Interoperability scale experiments on, outside of any expectation of fluid dynamic form fruition from conservation of energy process, from the microcellular up. And then you see gaps, like someone took one out of an interoperability experiment here between here and here, and then shoved it in over here, and then shoved it in over here. See how it works. Because that is what it is. And there's no difference in the future. 918, shadows before, right? Zoroastrian hymns from the depths of Olympus. 0, 2012. In a black hole, there's no time, insofar as this organism's interaction and influence domain upon you is concerned. But you experience time. That's you agreeing to the Poincare conjecture, and then you're in time as it is history memory. Does that make sense? And you look at the Bible before, right? Why do they live so long? Well, they aren't agreeing to interface with the lower construct because, and you're compressed experientially insofar as manifold space. And at the loss, look at alien days, right? There's a lot of things that you can't say necessarily, but brought to the light in confirmation bias. There's 2012. So at the same time, the form fruition of, it seems like, well, there's alien intervention. See, what's the catalyst internally in the alien intervention? Quite literally. And in satire, you see, to ease the roll off, what the pluralistic expression of this, while wearing your face, just like Taylor Swift, you've got robotics, human cloning, intentionality refraction as a result of no legislation in the Chinese food restaurant of the world on most people attempting in the food chain to turn refraction, expectant, probabilistic in any thought, vector, or motion. And in the food chain, but still needing an organic what? Interaction, observer domain. That's the point of it. Its existence is to face hug you, right? And once it, hugs the puppy too tight, it goes, oh, it has no complex for not hugging the puppy too tight, right? That's the Yulin Dog Meat Festival. That's I love you, ah! That's humanity. Ah, graze. Oh no, me same thing. Everything same thing. I gotta go somewhere else. And you see time as a misnomer in logical deduction that this is the case. So it expands within infrastructure, time, pluralistically, then recondenses, having engulfed your experiential energy. You're already complexly contrived in 918, right? The antediluvian period, Prometheus, follow that evolutionary line insofar as your logic in linear time. So evolution is real, but not relative to your paradigm. That's important. That's the paradox where you're not allowed a third option of full logic, right? The chicken or the egg. The donut or the hole. Screams at the end. Kurt's murdered by the Chinese food restaurant CIA. Love, is Jeffrey Epstein forward, and Pavitsky equals Cummings, literally a fucking alien, right? I would say parasymbiotically at all levels of psycho-emotional expression. Then she's in that 666 movie, right? Follow that over to Dave Grohl. Guns on the cover, right? Right? The ray gun, right? But that's the misnomer. See, there's many CIAs, right? The stream ebbs and flows, right? The Reagan administration didn't kill Kurt Cobain, right? Nor did their CIA, right? See, I'm making a bifurcation. The Bush administrations did, insofar as encapsulate and enable, within the optics of, the ritualistic douchebags that exist below the handlers of knowing, right? And media apparatus spun because this person is caring too much. Right? So there's no caring too much, you can see above the lodge, about the actual industry of, you're in fire world. So the care is, I want to make a Mercury engine and get out of your paradigm of power complex and sit above the lodge and say, fuck you, eat shit, like I'm doing right now. You know why I'm doing it? Because that craft is over there, periodically, or wherever it wants to be. Check it out. Go ask don't ask anyone up and down your lower or whatever, even the guy on 3. It's a misnomer, 1, 2, 3, Up, down, left, right. Well, who knows? So don't be a douchebags and go. I made a whole film. That's why DARPA was in town so slathered on, right? At Malco and in Midtown, they predictive ran the alien thing. I even went to it. Said, hey, DARPA douchebags, take your picture. Took their picture. DARPA douchebags, trying to predictively load themselves over top of my film. Anti-gravity hymns about literally alien technology at the U of M library. I give a long-form discussion, which then contextualizes these things. How am I able to give this? And the film is impossible. I made it by myself. So these assholes are trying to attach themselves in gang stacking, front-loading prop, and then you see Nope also at the same time. You might notice where I am now. Who's on the front page? We've addressed this. Everything's okay, I'm sure, at administration. John Woo might not necessarily be directing the film anymore, and your data is kind of being looked at. Following you around. Follow them around, following you around. Imagine the scale of this. It's kind of a joke that I'm here. 7787. I finished 707 this morning on the recording. 777 SunTrust over that way. They don't like that number. 777. 777. 777. 777. So, the Ryman Zero. So I stitched in subsonic on Black Hole to Everywhere. The Amazon front porches is why I'm casually fucking these douchebags off. Keep in mind I'm coming exactly to this location because that's at the quintessence of my ambient convergence for almost, 37 films and musics. So from the porch of Amazon to that little pole that used to have a terrible sine wave emittance right by the lake. That was the fulcrum. They pulled it up. Now it is. It is. Always will be in hyperspace. This hyperdimensional object that surrounds Memphis. And essentially is my neural net. Plus, because you've interacted with me. You don't understand the observer domain. Your little doggy bullshit. And you've run it concurrently through my entire Ambry matrix at all lattice intersections to intersect my neurology. Sometimes with attempted traumas and refraction color remembrances that aren't necessarily recorded as such, right? But are accentuative of what? Neuronal impression across morphogenetic non-bound space and mind. Thank you. So long, and thanks for all the fish. The universal gravitational constant, 6.29, it's twice 22 over 7. between two people, loss and engagement, and one person receiving. That makes sense. So, you see a lot of Dojin, Nidri, harmonic equivocations in the Jurassic Park. I would equivocate that too, right? I would equivocate, probably makes too much off of an event, and before is not necessarily socioeconomically relevant, I would argue, is also still not in any way whatsoever. The richest people in the world don't, and money at some point, like I said, it's power. So I'm talking to all levels of ego, and that's something you understand, because money doesn't exist necessarily. And so we'll follow that thing back to, I'm at 2009 YMCA, right next to a lodge. That thing's a douchebag place. U of M's a douchebag place. Overton Park. I'm not necessarily knowledgeable about all this, but, we all gotta live somewhere, right? I'm working on stuff, and then working on this book, right? And so it's called Obsidian Sunrise in 2009. Right before this, my father, outside the thing, he goes, something or other Obama thing stuff. Oh, he's a different guy. He's playing the politics as a different guy. Here comes a different guy. And I say, that's the same guy. He's a 322 guy. You're full of shit. Then I, Bitcoin, something or other, and the CIA steps in, right? And, I can't remember, right? Whoopsie daisy, broke my ankle on Summer Avenue. Isn't that convenient? Well, while I'm, conveniently squared in that YMCA and known to be there, after knowing this connectivity thing, because my dad is a fucking psychopath, right? And upper food chain connected. So the moment I said that, this type of weirdo, up to the point of Princess Diana style bullshit, which that was on Summer Avenue, and then I'm in the dark. Where am I? Well, in the ambulance, they gave me morphine. Right? I don't do drugs, except this thing, right? And wake up in the hospital. And how long, though? See spinal tap. But in a military family that is so hyper-intelligence concentrated, and I have a history of, the background with everything that I mentioned, altar placement, extreme, going all the way back to Luella Getz walking me in the park and fucking sucking my little dick, right? Think I don't remember, right? Yeah, over Lausanne. Well, this is a commonality between the douchebag brigade, right? We'll cut back to that. So Luella Getz, remember the connectivity there. Right down the street from Dr. Feelgood. I'm a white male. Notice that? I don't hate anything. I'm kind of a Prometheus thing from ain't no around here, right? Effectually, fuck you, eat shit, right? So, back here, right, insofar as the, the relevance of species interaction has to be recessed. We'll just cut back to this plane of thought from an overarching topological perspective, regardless of any connotation to the legitimacy of this argument. You could probably say this is true after so much machine intelligence consumption, right? Would you say that's true even without regards to this argument? Probably. Everyone needs to step back and say, oh, what are we actually anthropologically? Because automation is encroaching, scalar to money's applied. Problems now are exponential tomorrow. So, regardless of any sort of, you butthurt about this one way or the other, the moment-to-moment minutia of roll-off is still experienced, and you got to deal with it, right? So, oh, Elvis, yeah. Glitched at Elvis. Isn't that interesting? You glitch around trauma zones, right? Cold, hot, cold, hot. That's refraction. Raped around there. Mentioning it, find myself complexly autonomically almost walking through those areas. Not really. I'm recording ambient sarcastically with the full knowledge that that's the case, that I'm doing that. The house sells there to whomever I wouldn't know, and then they move out to their lot here at 8160. My grandfather, Wilson West, was silently tortured to death by, quite literally, psycho-emotionally, a psychopath. And when you follow the line, she is attached to Jewish mafia. And the person that comes in is a demographic insert that is well known and predictively handled into position, to motion, no optics into what was occurring with him. And so that's what Whitney Cummings does. That's the goal. It's the most sadomasochistic ritual to penultimate continuance of torture. Let that sink in. So that's what happened to my grandfather. He has no memory on purpose. She broke his leg, resulting in there trying to graft me onto a situation where I was in exodus, right? Attempting to root me there, and then I became at this level of software, monetarily, and then the outfall. Keep in mind, I'm in a honeypot situation since my father met me at a restaurant next to the West Street Diner in 218, where I pull his IME off his stupid fucking cell phone, you douchebag. You stupid douchebag. He thinks he's so smart with his computers. One little look in a Chinese food restaurant. Your whole world goes tumble. So cross-incentivization of, the enemy is my enemy, right? So that's what happened there for 5 seconds. And then I fucked him off real hard, right? Because it is a Chinese food restaurant already, like I said. 322 is China, period. You just have an equation sign. What I did was, and then fucked them all off, right? Because they're all retards with cell phones. And logistically helpful going forward, man-boy lovers especially, super douchebags on video especially. For what? For some monetary design? I got billions of dollars. What do I need? Power? Got it. It's about infrastructure. It's about, this is a parasymbiotic thing, like the film. It is. Other worlds, say Saturn. See the hexagon? We're talking about engineering. So we experience the hexagon in myriad facets. The indole, it's complex logic here. The bird flying, right? Saturn. See other aliens? Actual aliens, right? So that was just like in a lower conservation of energy Fermi filter that is necessarily treated as the top by this organism technologically. But that's just kind of like the doorway into more technology. The mercury reactor, anti-gravity, etc. They run on that. And you're eating popcorn watching Independence Day, right? And who's controlling the conversation about chaos? The Mandelbrot set's not very helpful for logic fruition in physics, right? That's kind of the point. And why are the Chinese buying, let's cut to the lower top, why are they buying so much farmland in the United States? See X-Files now. Remove the literalization of alien. So, insofar as the red thing, those movies, why you buy so much farmland? You got China. We already got boats and shit. So it's one of those where, more? Is it just a monopoly? You think about what other logistics are capabilized by so much surface area and then subtopology generalistically. So that was the, hey, get drones out over all this farmland yesterday. Very basic logic is you own all this land, you've already done all this other shit to $7 trillion and silently encapsulated with identity politics at all vectors. It was a clean attack on the United States, semi-successfully but not necessarily. And in the roll-off, you have to say, well, this has occurred. You live in a Chinese food restaurant, more or less, with a digital communist manifold lattice of communications that's enabling massive, scalar, Kafkaskian, gang-stalking presentations and field motions of what? Conditioning that handshake feed. If you literally, if this goes on, right? If that had gone on, you would have DEI people who show up, literally. If you fall probabilistically out of expectant, like THX 11386, probabilistic vector of motion in a grocery store microvariantly, right? Quite fucking literally. And they would do it under the guise of, I love you. Squeeze the puppy. Right? That's what that is. They don't even know it. And the further out on the equation Jesse Owens is, Mossad, Epstein, Gates, Fauci, United School, I'm trying to actually, he's right there in the middle, right? See the Olympics, right? So Richard Attenborough here, right? There's China down there, Horn of Africa. Form a nice little triangle, right? Silk Road connects Richard Attenborough to China, right? And banking connects Israel to China. And international terrorist logistics against all sovereign nations without connotation and without provocation for this type of engagement, the Chinese-Israel military data industrial complex attacking Earth, period. You aren't under the assumption this is the case because the media complex is completely controlled. So in the wake of this, you can motion genocides, you can run $7 trillion head cold scams, roll on transhumanist, inroad interfacing upgrades such as nanites to accentuate a missing field that's already necessarily, this isn't the only one not accounted for in physics. Look at Semitic language, overtone off. Now look at alien days, right? There's Masonic Jews also, so I'm not shitting on everyone. But, you see the, and it starts to, the Poincare conjecture starts to occur, right? And so you don't see a local, this is just like the angry, DEI person. They're complexly autonomic. You don't see a local interaction of the language with an extra dimensional data layer, but it nonetheless has non-local effect. So within the influence domain, even outside of perceived consumer signal band technology, you have what? magiques. How does he do it? He's holding the fishbowl, right? He's holding the fishbowl. That's identity politics, right? So there's identity politics, magiques, right? Then there's like, augmented nanite overlay and scalar to the tune of compute applied to the observer domain individually to create unrealities each unto themselves. Implied through this, there's many layers of engagement. You coming off softwares, refraction to a box like this. This is a reverse confirmation bias scam insofar as engagement like you perceive to a person like me who's condensing from a quadratic sort of understanding layer. If that makes sense. So comically doing capture for anything that, presents in refraction in the 2D world we're dealing with here. If that makes sense. So, at all layers, entrapment. Sorry. But the trap is what? Well, the Venus flytrap is full of toys, right? and the toys are actual aliens, actual space. Not fake space, where you get the rocket shits, right? That look like big dicks. That's great. I'm an October Sky guy too. Let me preface that. Love that movie. Just like I like right? Like both things the same, keeps me warm, right? But at some point it becomes show, because the other technology does exist. And you live right next to a giant red planet that's covered in sulfides. Sulfides beget cinnabar. And watch the Dune films now, or don't. Don't watch those. Just know that David Lynch, Twin Peaks or something or other, Mercury, not necessarily mentioned at all. It's on the cover 1600, right? So it's like putting the book on the coffee table and taking the cover off, right? That's the focus on the donut, not the hole, right? Don't do that. That's the American political system, right? Where's the third guy? That would be a choice, right? So you got to do the best you can do with the paradox presented, right? Yeah? See, that's always the conditioned state. It's forcing the intellect into a paradox choice, and insofar as that, RGB, get it? It's like you're watching TV. You live in E equals MC squared. They live in E equals MC 22/7, but are effectually dictating pi upon you in E equals MC squared Poincare conjecture land, TV land, right? In understanding and in all other topologies of interaction. So we'll leave it there. For right now, I'm kind of tired about talking about this, but a great flow motion of language, I think, necessarily. I guess the next thing is solutions, specific, interdomain, and amplifying the roll-off of a transmutagenic, parasymbiotic, extraterrestrial organism pluralistically expressed across many genetic domains, and some of them, well, complexly autonomic and separated so as to not know this is the case and operate but in a harmonic and separation as if it's the case, right? Effectually. And so it is the case. We can see through macro Earth as seen from space, and effectually, locally, the parasymbiotic psychosexual paradigm is the same thing as the alien archetype. And if you follow the alien archetype to the literal alien, you don't get one. But you get the same psychology of other nefarious. All the way back to 918 in China, where there's no forward development in the aesthetic of culture. And then a progression into the addiction of extraneous, while the simultaneous loss and individuation of aesthetic. So that's animism. Explains Japan's fetishes with swords, right? That's why I like Zelda so much. A lot of them don't even know this. That's the complex autonomic entirety is more so encapsulated at the heart of its inherent expression. So at the heart of the inherent equal sign of homogeny is more so endogenously self-reflexively asserted as not being the case that this is the case. And then you have grays. Right? So, and then not necessarily the case, right? How does that make sense? So, you have the most complexly autonomic foot soldiers, lemmings, right next to the most knowing, just like in the basic Earth paradigm of terrestrial economic and caste seeding of, whatever's, without regards to this. The Chinese patriarchy, one child, system, etc., prints the Laura Dern situation anyways, fluid dynamically. Because you see the machine intelligence use, parasymbiotic, everything. Each China, I love you, squeeze, right? Where's our Hollywood? Oh, I'm only one thing. Oh no, what do I do? And it goes to other world. That's all this thing is. It like wants to, and then in the equation is experienced as psychopathy. Because when you expand something that isn't anything except attention gravitation in the interference domain, that's gravity, right? And you get squeezed into it because it's an induction channel of false choice, right? A Venus flytrap, pluralistically expressed, right? So that is what this thing is. It isn't not this. You call it it. It's that thing it from the film. Remember that film? John Carpenter. Why does John Carpenter get away with They Live? Well, it's not entirely good, the films, insofar as forming full logic. They're garbage. It's just like, Jodorowsky directs Jurassic Park and AI in 2001, and Star Wars, and all the forced nomenclature archetypal assemblages that you would word salad into forming a logic fruition about, but presented more or less complexly to motion logic away from proper fruition. Such so much as Malcolm directing the Paris Olympics, Gaga, Polanski, fire equals sex, bad thing stuff, whatever, where's the devil? Well, Hitler, bad thing? Hard to say. That's the encapsulator there. Well, I have like an affinity maybe necessarily for his creative work and not his actions, right? Maybe forgivable and was using as an archetype necessarily in certain places for what? Example, right? But, still appreciate the work and was conducive to here's the complex autonomic psych trap. At the end of the runnel is, well, there's World War II. So Malcolm, the Chinese scientist, robot arm, AI, extraterrestrial, transmutagenic, parasymbiotic, multi-domained, expressed, expanded, Venus flytrap from space, doesn't give his next door neighbor, Hitler, what? Alien aircraft and advanced weapon technology to kill himself, right? Doesn't make any fucking sense. Unless he's a parasymbiotic, transmutagenic, pluralistically expressed, non-domain bound organism and doesn't care about self-immolation. Get it? Look at the Jurassic period. That's genetic interoperability scale experiment. Grays exist up here, complex autonomic, expendable organisms down here, injected at its behest to experience. And in the dividing the equation sign, you see Whitney Cummings is standing on stage instead of you, receiving, at the basic parasymbiotic interaction instead of an actual comedian. Who's standing on stage during the Oscars? What? Whitney Cummings? No, Amy Schumer. Jeffrey Epstein? Esther Povitsky? H3H3, Klein, Kamala Harris, Corey Chase, AI, Metasystems, China, Pfizer. So it's right there. You can see it. Automation scalar presentation of a cluster right there that would jack you off to your mommy in the morning and show the same color later on in the day as if she is, so that you complexly and autonomically respond to her as if she is. So that's within the domain of basic linguistical and color refraction psychology without even a morphogenetic background noise attached to the equal sign, not noticed, right? Motioning the harmonic of the equation internationally, right? And then you have the surface topology of this old thing, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that wasn't, right? Nanite overlay, directly attached to pineal, attempting to augment or bifurcate the design's desire of gravitation to the induction channel of Venus, is essentially, describing that relationship. But, the interfacing plane, the Poincare conjecture, here it is. The monolith, here we are in the hotel, right? Staring at it at the end of the bed, right? Forever, you're staring at the Poincare conjecture, right? And the mirror in the jungle, the monkeys, they look, oh, but the monkeys, you don't know what they are. Hold on one second. That's the mirror in the jungle. Organic bananas. Does it make sense now? So I was layering this on in a consumable, stack, right? Aren't linearly possible. I'm telling you this from space. That's not possible, right? Evolution does exist. Look at Prometheus, right? Reflective symbiotic evolutionary biology, genetic, but you're already complexly contrived, right? So when this thing presents. Does that make sense? So let's look back at Atlantis. Now that past Mickey Mouse and like pedo rape dungeon down there at Disney, theme graft attached to identity politics and all your archetypes. It's a Chinese food restaurant. It's a Chinese food restaurant. Sam Jackson's region, right? She doesn't know, oh my God! Ah! Get out of me, right? And then she's like crawling for the door. That's the realization. In the complex autonomic separation, you don't realize that what the alien actually is. So there's nothing wrong with fucking aliens, bro. You know what I'm saying? There's any number of pigments that are cool or whatever. Fuck around. Context. See? I'm not in your sort of interoperable paradigm where there's only allowance psycho-emotionally or sexually within this, and there's no Indians as part of the operant conditioning in feed. Why is that? It's not part of the psycho-emotional equation of China to Memphis. There's your tell. Where are they? Well, they're enlightened. They get like 50 different deities and they practice Tantra. They know exactly what you're doing, you fucking douchebags. It doesn't, your refraction doesn't work on them, and that's why there's a sort of other sort of presence necessarily in the water, maybe esoterically at that data level that already endogenously is kind of fucking this shit off. Because it's not good for international desire for the White Star Line to not tilt that way regardless of any of this. And that's kind of one of the big points is you got to go slowly turn the ship of America away from China. The Chinese-American finger trap. And it happens very quickly because it's like an automated thing. And it's not manufacturing motion. That's what we're trying to maintenance in the thing. It's what? General gravitational interest in the paradigm of metaphysics and not necessarily, Bollywood or whatever, but the industry of actual enlightenment where there's a pluralistic possibility at the basic metaphysical level for the understanding of other rather than just a black guy in space that goes, ah, I'm fucking you, and you think I'm making love to you, but I'm killing your species, right? Well, here comes the predator. Hey, how's it going? All right, so moving back to that. I'm not a predator. I'm just a guy. But the things of the lodge, they know what this is. So this is kind of, we'll use as an example, a prop, Soylent Green. So parasymbiotically, effectually, Amy Schumer's having stolen your jokes, sees you psycho-emotionally and sexually as food. Right? You're a dog. That's why the dog archetype Dojin, in the Yulin Dog Meat Festival. Right? You're a dog for food and interaction in a sadomasochistic other way. In a progressive fashion, as long as that can be maintenance, and you exist in the suffering of interaction. You say, why? That's why. You say, why? What's the industry of this? That's a complex autonomic parasymbiotic transmutagenic organisms paradigm. There isn't one. Gravitation, and in the equation of separation and interaction, once injected, you experience in the gravitation of separation, sitting in between this domain, the gravity of compression, which is experienced as sadomasochistic ritual, Satanism thing stuff, whatever sauce, your feeling of the archetypes, internationally Illuminati thing stuff, whatever, CIA, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what the facade is necessarily, the pluralistic expression of this thing, digital communist environment, on the lower topology. But in the macro, 918, the garden, right? From space. You're already complexly contrived since the antediluvian period. What happened to them? Well, the convergent period maybe got out of hand or just kind of went into a wash. Is there life on Mars? Where are the spiders? So that's a trap. Why? Why is it a trap? We already have anti-gravity propulsion technology. That's firewalled the Matrix, right? Watch the Terminator films now. So the entire planet is being encapsulated in satellites, right? That's exactly like Skynet, right? So robotics, cloning. So keep in mind, I'm not turning on anyone. You go on your paradigm of dog god thing. Turning on. No, I'm not part of your equation. I never was. So keeping that in mind. So, E here, human dog food here, so far as the Chinese and the parasymbiotic pluralistic expression. Me sit up here and buddies, right? That's the water over the stone. It's kind of the hand over the thing. That's what that means. And so, the point is that all your base are belong to. No, that's not it. That's what the parasymbiotic transmutagenic thing does. And the basic psycho-emotional engagement of roll-off is to experience might through the benevolent hand rather than the sadomasochistic continuance of time as it is history memory. It seems might proactive to quell life as if industry is the normality of engagement. And that comes out of the industry of maintaining fire from the cave to infinity, right? So if you think about a black hole that just went on forever, that's like if you just stared at relativity forever and never experienced non-termination 22/7. Right? So that's the attempt of the organism in space-time's manifold expression and interaction, at some point terminus, at which point the confirmation bias of this plops it from the shell in confirmation, but the catalyst necessarily had to and quadratic. What's creating the gravity on this thing that has you trapped in the Poincare conjecture? But it's like outmatched, field-wise expression. So simultaneously quadratically condensing around its impression on, space-time's manifold. Love those alien days. You got to love those alien days, right? Look over the lodge. So you have also that. Look at time wave 0. Also, take the pi ratios up. You'll see another pattern. That's the lodges turning back on, right? And so satire flowing into the reset is knowing. So far as the inner domain of knowledge, and maintenancing that light. And you see the fake alien and technology, the alchemical process, right? It happens harmonically side by side within the domain sphere of its influence. As it is the confirmation bias necessarily fluid dynamically of the, craft, perfect aerodynamic form of its chosen sort of, phase shifting, and as if E.T., not necessarily, and Quetzalcoatl to keep the primordials in line, and Zoroastrian hymns off the walls from the depths of Olympus, I'm sure, but very shadowy, and, the truth is on the cover in 1600, written by Bruno and written by, is it John Dee, right? So when you have that basic smoking gun, it's not the Reagan administration, it's a complicated word salad where, Dave Grohl also concerns himself with the boo-hoo, make a lot of money after intentional 9/11. How do we know this? Because Jurassic Park is a rub, the Holy Mountain is a rub, AI is a rub, 2001 is a rub. Contagion's predictive programming, right? So that's where the parasymbiote and its, it gets caught in its complexly explaining itself at its apex of seemingly hiding the hand through, complex disclosure and then obfuscation at the apex of archetypal expression, where the Chinese scientist and Malcolm are surrounding and shrouding and encapsulating humanity's thought process, right? Via controlling the media. And so that paradigm was over. You see a lot of counter fluid dynamics condensating and then necessarily needing to be maintenance in the wake of, things change hands, nanites, cyborgs, whatever. See Amber Heard, right? Why is Amber and all the other archetypes expressed there? Perfect nomenclature forest. Dodgson. So you have Nidri. He's interchangeable with Jackson, who's Regent, right? And Nidri owns the boats. I don't own the boats. I'm from outer space, right? I'm not part of your psychosexual or emotional paradigm. Fuck you, eat shit. So they own those boats, right? So it's talking to something that's so many equal signs away, right? And complexly at a reactionary psychology, not capable without getting angry, understanding that's the kind of thing of the region. Right? You've been designed to be complexly autonomic and separate, but acting in a harmonic fashion. See Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan for that basic sort of equation, right? And he's holding up the cue cards, and the song is about a word salad of history that means nothing. And he's tapping a thing in the background. That's the feed. That's Zuckerberg's feed. It's nothing, and they're confirmation biasing with analytics. Oh, this is Taylor Swift. Ding, 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 ding. But she's like, and she sounds like, could she literally be a robot at this point? Yes. And the recipient of all of the faces in the halls of humanity, most sweetest moments, quintessed in language as if, and then rebooted as if a person, right? Oh, see, I know this not to be true necessarily, that progression. That was all language of the theater of life to make her seem real before the Pfizer scam. All of that. Seems too complex? Nope. All those people were on the same food chain. Follow Charlie Brooker and her whatever person. It's a scam at optics. And then now she's a real boy. She's Pinocchio. I'm a real boy. Sells Pfizer pills to your kids. Converges female and male demo with a football, right? And now you're taking unnecessary medication again in the antithetical administration. Because I'm a primary Republican, by the way, insofar as that voted 136 at the 2001. But and then it's taking place in Pfizer, like a fucking stadium. So keep that in mind. The BIPOC is now in a box because it is the thing I'm talking about. And in a data sense, Locke stepped out. There is no potentiality of back in the door. You think you're in a honeypot. Out. The label's on, and the power is balanced. And that's the word salad of the equation of the future history of the Earth, which is you just know, and the emotional transcription layers applied, especially for the last 12 years, just at this layer, were all to disincentivize basic logic and complex logic about any number of things. That's why you can't think about anything. You get triggered about stuff. Everything is a conspiracy if it's past one or two levels of logic, and then you apply conspiracy and can't think. Does that make sense? And so people below the waterline of you can't think past 1, 2, that's the Poincare conjecture, right? And you can't form complex thought processes like this because you're stuck in a refraction maze of neuronal intentionality seeding. And you go to the place to relax, and there's 5 of you in there with your cell phone doom scrolling with an 80 IQ, doom scrolling for 12 years in a fucking sauna, right? Of course you're brainwashed, right? Without even aliens. You're brainwashed, complex, autonomic psychopath organisms who are man-boy lovers simultaneously. We're talking about black males, while being extremely professed as homoerotic sexual rape dominators. And, are on video, but not necessarily massively presented, whatever. But statistically, optically, that's the DEI engine rolling it out. And follow Jesse Owens back to 1927, 1936. You're there at the Olympics, watch it. What's going on? Hitler's such a bad guy to Jesse, right? So you even have one of the domain of this history allowed, that, he okay with Jesse, something rather, and then so this thing, so I feel this way. Don't get lost in that. None of them. Bullshit. Both things. Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan. Fuck you, ate shit. Very complexly and presented, right? So you look at it, it's shadowy. I don't want Hitler anywhere. I don't want this Hitler guy bad stuff. But it seems like in future, if you control all media, you can run a genocide. What's 2 million people to 6 million people, right? They're baddie guys. They're like Borat. Who cares? See how bad that is and why there might be upper level engagement? Because I'm the guy that goes, hey, Sasha, you're a shill douchebag. And you're motioning the facade archetype for genocide. consumption. And he comes out and gives a statement. Because this was through Sarah's DMs. Once upon a time, kind of legitimately, not necessarily trying to bark up that tree, as everyone does, but not necessarily. There's levels of software here. Keep in mind my dad's cell phone thing. So, you look at the blacklist, the little black book, and keep in mind this isn't grandstanding of any kind. This continually mines out micro harmonics between the domain binders of networks. So that's why I keep reassessing it, right? For law enforcement fielding of a trite nature, right? And then the, Tweedledee Tweedledum at the same tea table, you follow Tim and Eric Silverman from the Horn of Africa, and with Kanye West, the man on stage, K West, I'm the guy on the cover of Ziggy Stardust. I play guitar really good. Who plays guitar? Ziggy Stardust. Doesn't rap. Kurt Cobain doesn't rap, right? Chinese people don't like white people to be standing on stages with big voices, right? Who works by proxy at the behest of them in the 90s? The Bush administration, CIA. To encapsulate who? See Rosemary Carroll now for the smoking gun here. At the heart of word salad bullshit land, I'm sure. In the heart of darkness, you're at Twin Peaks. You're Dale Cooper. You're at that house in Seattle. You see what? You see a sadomasochistic ritual. And then murder. By love in the deep dark forest of earth, and you only get a donut or a hole as an option and a handshake and a smile. There's, Bowie or whatever. Lots of archetypes. That's the sort of penultimate callback to the forward confirmation bias. Fuck you, eat shit. It's a quadratic fuck you, eat shit. Doesn't matter how much you did your media thing with how many pluralistic express things stuff upon psychology. It's a two-dimensional effect. Doesn't matter if Bowie fuck... Have you heard me play guitar? I don't need a crybaby pedal. I'm telekinetic fucking alien. It's a joke. So that's kind of where the buck falls. Is, the little whimper at the station at Paddington Station. Voldemort. There he is. The most complexly contrived with my name on the cover. And the car in space, right? Elon. No God. 777. Put it together. Who am I? Well, the douchebag brigade that lines up behind Kamala Harris is 44. Go back to Audrey Hepburn. Satan. The Adventures of Young Satan. You put 777 over 444, and you see the basic numerical logistical capacity of technology and the might of the industry of crap. It's the flea. Mommy, can't you see the fleas? That backbeat with no substance of context. Right? No astral expression, just more pie. Brought to you by Phil Spector, right? Doesn't go anywhere, it just gets, right? And it turns out Phil kills his, 2 million people, right? And isn't it about love? You're looking at John Lennon dancing on stage, right? Or whatever. 322, there it is. And you're sitting in the park with Doc, right? You're there sitting there now. And you think back on the song, you're looking at Audrey's hands. The fishbowl, the Chinese scientist. The Chinese wizard. Right there. The joke's on you. And there's many layers to the equation of complexifying and recondensing logic to what is really going on there. But you hear later, maybe what went on and you study the archetypes. Who is she really talking about under the veneer of identity politics? She's a beautiful cat. You followed her into the city through the Tiffany's window, right? And identity politics. He's fucking you. Yeah. Feels great, big dick. Why don't you fuck a dildo or something? Because you're not going to exist until, or whatever. You Obama, right? That's what regions are made for. Look at the statue of David. Like 7 or 9 extended. Insofar as ratio, proportions at some point in scale, see the human, have a exacting proportion of relevance. At some point, you can see where the parasymbiotic organism encroaches insofar as scalar presentation of at the psychosexual level, right? And so then look at what? There's no Chinese scientists fucking Brie Larson in all your feeds. Why? They could have a big dick. Remember the genetics? So that's the tell at the psychosexual emotional level. Not part of the equation. Sitting at a different software layer. So that this parasymbiotic sort of like experiences by proxy the gray through its pluralistic morphogenetic implied line. Well, it's not morphogenetic necessarily, that's the outer manifold. This is within a lower domain that's, maybe explains why you have compression artifacts on genetics within the domain of the relevant history, such as, refractions of twins, twins among twins, and then reharmonic alleles flipped around below, a twin, right? That's expressing, psychosexual, literally, right? And the reason is that's pre-convergent symptom of what? There's the grays in the future, and then you see the software topology, say in the UK, 322 equals Chinese food restaurant equals 88. Richard Attenborough, because of what's her fuck face, Kurt's ex-wife. Can't you see the fleas? Can't you see the fleas? Right? And so, there's flea. I see the flea now specifically. We'll fall flea now. So, Post Malone is on tour. Stitch H3H3 to Post Malone, right? The cover of Transideli is right behind the fish place. Shelby Farms. Post Malone opens Shelby Farms, right? Post Malone is a planted guy. He does, during the COVID, the Kurt Cobain smokes enough cigarettes to try to sound like Kurt Cobain and then try to technically overplay him. With the voice, right? Oh, that's nice. Huh. I see where that's coming from. Do you see where that's coming from now? And how fucked up and ritualistic that is? So, H3H3, go back to Pavitsky, Wexner, Chicago, follow the Chicago down to Memphis. That's a pipeline. So that's why distance knowledge of by satanic pedophile, rapist, human trafficking node, Esther Pavitsky, and pluralistic knows about Memphis ongoings at a distance. And here's the tell with that one. The rub is on in this is the last page of Protocols of Elders of Zion. Her name's Esther, right? So she can do anything she wants. Where's Brody Stevens? What's the name of that podcast? So she, before we preface this, she has distance knowledge of local CCP infiltration of city and human trafficking operations at a distance. the distance harmonic explicit speaks to. The nailology appears, I shared this with any number of personnel attached to her general network. White flight in 2018, right? There's any number of things that happen, the Chinese food restaurant thing down there, New Asia, up there, Crow's Nest, Panera Bread, DEI organization across the street, Amazon, Chili's, been there for 35 years, attempted vehicular homicide at the top of the hill by Metasystems, low-level assassins in a big red truck. Handshook by CIA personnel in Panera that followed over from Germantown Library. So you got Mossad, CIA handshaking with an optic douchebag who's also a, look at me, I got big boobs, in the library. And I said something to her, and this is very pointed. I said something about peanuts, right? George Washington Carver, very inventive. She didn't get the rub. See, I was talking about, I know you're with 121 downtown, immediately, even though you're presenting as an obtuse vector, right? You're with them, and you're here to try to kill me. And so I do the whoopsie daisy, and there goes the red truck. And I go, knock, knock, knock on his window, thanks for the plate, and he looks at me like I just stole his soul, because I did. Literally. And then I talked to the officers a little bit later at Chili's, where I made the report. Black officer, white officer. I'm not sure who they were. Said, I'm going back in Panera. And at the top of the hill, you can see Metasystems. The symbol on the cover of Scott West Infinity, a terrible 24-hour film that I never should have tried to make. And it became beautiful eventually, whose fulcrum of interest is the tree that doesn't exist there in Exeter anymore because, it's right next to 777. All the banks changed their facades and got flushed with capital, and douchebags running around stalking U.S. citizens. Right? So the Chili's that was there for 35 years, right? Ish. Poof. 2 weeks after, health department? Just like the local restaurant on Cooper and Young, health department? That's DEI takedown, under the guise of, and at the behest of Metasystems, through that equation sign that you don't see the connectivity. So downtown, health department. Right across the street you see the entertainment industry. You see Bob Dylan. No, that's white compliant America that raps and sings like a little boy, right? And you follow that to Puffy, and you realize what that is. Justin singing for Obama. Oh, little Justin. Oh, that's our white America that we get right next to what's her fuck face, right? Is it urethra? Because we're next to the hospital? I don't know. I'm not clever. But it is the Lowenstein Mansion. Epstein Mansion, practically. Who owns the slaves? He owns urethra. Why do you feel parasymbiotically affinity for Bob Dylan? They have you in a cage across the street from where you work. So that's the cutting you from the chaff. It's very complex to tell you that you are a slave still at all levels, and that's how. It's right across the street, you don't see it. Do you see it? You're behind the fence with Justin, and it seems like the entertainment industry, but it isn't. And you get Little Pump for 50 million views, but no Jimi Hendrix, actually, which is me, right? Kanye West on the cover, not Kanye West, who comes in through the Horn of Africa, brought to you by Richard Attenborough, who's actually a Chinese food restaurant, right? So, do a little math. Insofar as the Chinese solar panels as if green energy technology paradigm, and not necessarily concerning itself with higher energy technologies because it upends the I guess, reductionist, finite available lithium something or other market garbage sauce. There's other minerals, like mercury, right? You haven't been clever enough, this is something you have to admit, to figure out how to roll off to that with some kind of industry. That's your problem. And you're doing all this other bullshit. This is the kind of the whole world. It falls in energy. And the big scam is rockets. You just gotta say. And you got Skynet getting set up around you. Like this has been, but we're dealing with the roll-off optics. You just have to know, right? Robotics that very much resemble Terminator films. Clones, right? At all levels of logistical insertion. So keep in mind, 322 equals a Chinese food restaurant. And all those esoterics that are around Arden Avenue, with the Illuminati thing out front, follow the puffy thing, right? Einstein's on the cover, 88 equals Hitler, downtown. Why? I don't want Hitler to equal anyone. Right? I'm not Hitler. We're just extremely powerful comparatively, right? No one should be. That's the point. No one is. Necessarily. Was? Yes. Did happen? Yes. So you're saying it didn't happen? You meanie, you did it. Even though we just murdered 2 million people, open face, right in your face, because we control media. That's what they did. Still calling back at it was comparatively 6-2 or something. Well, however many, you sort the head emotionally. I'm not making a word salad case for either of these douchebag groups. At a dogmatic level, I want everyone to succeed at a higher intellectual level out of the platonic shadows of we're all trapped in a desert and shooting at each other, right? That's a parasympathetic nightmare situation that has no solution on purpose because it is a parasymbiotic continuum where the perpetuation of that being the case is the reason. And it's not something that's trying to be overcome internationally through the lens of 918 entrance extraterrestrially. So that's just a character thing where you get confirmation bias that this thing for 100 years says, I'm the best boy in the world, but then murders everyone, kills your puppy right in front of your face, right? It's not your puppy, it's a human being somewhere else. And like I said, the ideology is nightmarishly ignorant. On the antithetical, the other one has no ideology. It is essentially just downforce and interaction. That's important to note. The Kabbalah is just like a mathematical construct, fluid dynamic continuance, and complexly autonomic available language for all pluralistic expressions, but nonetheless not individualistically maintenance as an output vector. Does that make sense? That's complex autonomism. And so, the further you are away from the equation, the more probabilistically you can be psychologically and or maintenance to be rolled off genetically. Insofar as, whatever. We're talking about the monkey again, right? So you've got Wilt Chamberlain fucking Terrence, what's his fucking name that directs the Sam Jackson fucks a cowboy in the face, right? That one. Regen, right? His mommy is like domed by Wilt Chamberlain. He sees this as a little boy, right? So that's the kind of environment he grows up in. Rape dominated by a basketball player, right? Sees it as a little boy. Keep in mind the context for this guy's being in an arena in competition. It's exactly the same in long form time. You don't see it condense as transsexuals competing in women's sports. And there's no difference. All you see is time as a domain binder. So you don't put a house cat, we're not comparing strength and relevance. It's like applied compute, like I'm smarter than all AIs in the world. so far as novelistic output potentiation, but not necessarily in specific reductionist capacity potentiation, but am nonetheless capable. Does that make sense? So, well, let's cut back out of this ego force of, the scale of whatever industry. Talk about the basic psychosexual dogmas of, where this thing comes in the house of humanity, right? Is, tabooifying and equivocizing sexuality away from your foundational segment through trauma. In refraction suggestion, you have a Pavlovian dog treat, but also a trauma trail, and never a Chinese scientist in the litany with a giant, genetically engineered, huge Chinese big dick. Where is it? Why don't you have one? You've got Gattaca for 100 years, well, forever. So there's where the logic falls, and there's no Indians, rape dominating Americans necessarily. I mean, I'm sure some is that if you look hard enough, but you can see that in any. But it doesn't get mass propagated as a mean operant conditioning variable in all facets of whatever is good for sovereignty in any nation state. This is used at a psychological vector with no Chinese scientists with a giant lizard big dick thing. Why? Because he's Bill Gates with a sweater. He's the most close to the thing and most knowing, right? Doesn't care about the actual expression literally in the interfacing domain because it's pluralistically experiencing, hydratically, like the Borg, right? So you lose individuated presentation psychological paradigm for your logical analysis, and then you see the thing closest to the equation. It's got a tiny dick on purpose. It has the propensity to have a huge dick, just like Wilt Chamberlain. This is the tell. Dottie, the sheep was 30 years ago. SR-71 Blackbird. Look at not ever donating plasma or blood anywhere. Don't do that. Stop doing that. Unless it's at a hospital directly or a legitimate blood bank that is not owned by a Chinese conglomerate through some sort of venture capital. I'm just telling you. So I'm okay, because when I was in there was a lockstep presence at any given moment, and has generally been around me. But you need the maintenance always, at every vector, the extreme certainty of what I'm implying. Just like complex robotics that are absolutely hyper-realistic past the point of Turing's inspection optically so as to be human. All right? So this all ends with you're just trying to figure out the pluralistic expressions of, in the data, use case of AI literally, like eventually it's relegated to all this problem is a solution. And it's like an energy reactor, anti-gravity, the foundation of a garden of next-gen civilization, right? But unfortunately, you have to experience roll-off necessarily in the theater of coming to the don't scream, this is the case. Right? So that's the hardest thing, pulling off the band-aid of knowledge, of ignorance. And it's a sort of alien intervention catalyst that had to necessarily, the ego might thing, you were in a trapped sort of Poincare conjecture situation. So, the penultimate of, is still, or whatever, because I am, right, human, effectually. See Huntsville, Alabama, space program, Star Children, Bell Labs, etc., and certain persons not necessarily, and being completely complicited too, at some point. Was 322 not necessarily a Chinese food restaurant? I don't think so. And, because that... But certain lower levels were more or less not necessarily aware that that was the case, that it was a Chinese food restaurant. Right? And those weren't necessarily, since 918, extraterrestrials and had been here and were masquerading at that point in presentation to 322, the ancient Chinese secret, as if, oh, where are they? The truth is out there, right? Well, it's not in here. It's not, it must be out there in the cornfields. Go back to that. Trite logistics. So, without any of this bullshit, I'm sure, you've got the Chinese, every conspiracy theorist in the world, I'm sure, has talked about cornfields and Bill Gates' sweaters, right? I'm not one of those people, right? Basic logistics state if someone is in your country buying up large tracts of land, right? You see those movies during the Reagan administration about all of a sudden a red wave invasion? Okay? Well, how do you think that happens? Well, if you buy up a shit ton of fucking surface topology and grow popcorn to watch it, the movies that they control, because that's Chinatown, you get how the long form rub seats in? And ethanol's in your Fire World engines and it's Soylent Green on the table. The food chain is like, this has always been this way. You have to come to the conclusion that there's always been a food chain. Right? So you go out in the woods right now. Is there one? I mean, you go out in the so what's the scam? Is it meat? Maybe not necessarily. Let's get mahi out. I'm spitballing with something. So far as morphogenetic, say, sense memory application to a zeroed person's diet, I would say 3 to 65 million years old and swimming like a... What is something that is maintenance into fruition and an unnatural sense and existent in the wild for 365 million years as the highest rotating predator? Right? Well, it's a DNA, essentially catcher and sieve for inspection at a higher level that you can't understand necessarily as you just see the local presentation layer. Think about the page in language in MGMT. Think about morphogenetic field theory and non-local storage of genetic information. Right? And transmission, telekinesis, etc. Memory. Right? So, I would assert, necessarily, there being something, just like with ginkgo and other stuff, not necessarily a desirous interaction with sort of the implied line is literal with, whatever, eat the shark, right? Whatever that means literally or metaphysically, it means save the sharks, right? No, don't save them. They're sharks. Are they necessary? Or you fish, don't you? You fish, right? Okay. So why do you want to save the sharks? Isn't that like a black guy rape fucking you, right? Why don't you just save one of the things that isn't trying to kill you and eat you? Because those are, and the only reason you can't come to the conclusion that's the case is because there's emotional transcription layers applied by communications that had seated themselves in basic Darwinian logic, in common knowledge and motion of industry and seeding of, mind and assumption before AI was placed on communications. And you can see the sexual skew begin. Here's the grays. Convergence out here. Here's male and female, right? That's why the strict whatever. Plus time, here's transsexuals in UK. We're smushing, we're modulating sexuality because we use operant conditioning, right? Going back and forth between metasystems and Pornhub and Tinder, and you're fucking a black guy all of a sudden. You had no desire to design to do that 5 years ago, right? Here you are. Plenty of that pornography. John Holmes, big dick black guys, going back to the 80s. What's the problem? Why don't you fuck them? Everybody's doing it. So statistically, it had seeded in general common knowledge and behavior based upon organic paradigm before 2012. All this content's available, fuck anything you want. There's not necessarily a taboo. Any number of cities, just do it. There wasn't a taboo, it's fucking 2012. Are you fucking kidding me? Jimi Hendrix, 1967. What gets rebooted? Unnatural, by proxy, militarized international use of minority groups by the CCP via data systems, period. And subsequently, any data system attached and seen doing that via machine intelligence, you can lace this intent with refraction and say something else on the cover, such so much as the implication of the overtones I was talking about between the domain of Africa and here, and at the upper echelon of the great. It's very good that we have an alternative communication systems, and Mr. Kennedy's in office, and we can hope for a pharma that is progressing towards the declared vector of benevolence, where triclosan and glyphosate roll off. There's kind of an alchemy again of pharma, where we're concerned with health and fruitioning a quintessence of medicine and therapeutics and knowledge, instead of suppressing and creating disease markets on purpose, right? When you trap fire below Mercury world, plus more time, so pi is a exponential elliptical curve of entropy with non-terminus within a construct domain of time. So the longer you spend time as a history memory, the longer you experience fire world and its effect on genetics. So data is genetics. Informational eugenics is eugenics. And then you see literal interaction with genetics converge with data systems, implied line psychology convergence of psychosexual, paradigm. And then transsexuals in the UK, somewhere here between the domain of male and female, and 12 years ago. So the Cambridge Analytica leak, on purpose, we could see Mr. Zuckerberg, of course, douchebag. You see that dog shit douchebag, full of douche. If you look at this cover, who chooses? I say Scott West Infinity, right? The lazy 8, right? You have the upright 8. If you don't understand what actual infinity is versus that, this is very complexly contrived to be the simple symbol here. It's not just like some little thing, but described in and out of the flow motion to quintessing that symbology and what it means. But why would you choose the lazy 8 on purpose? So Jews are very concerned with symbology and intentionality. You can see with all layer of satire. So it's no mistake, especially when you keep in mind the intentional vehicular homicide attempt at the top of Poplar there on record, by explicit metasystems, motion, there's some mirror in the back channel, there he is, black guy in a red truck. Who cares? Fuck you, eat shit. Told her to eat peanut butter again when I walked back in there after doing the tap dance around the truck, right? Same thing on in front of the fucking art college. But so what you get is nothing, insofar as the people that are concerning themselves with sadomasochistic ritual continuance using communication systems as a paradigm to continue that interfacing plane. Right? Then you have a whole sort of ritualistic world. See Emma Roberts, running around in Pulse, right? Exactly like that in Appified, attached to this elite douchebag, structure of sort of Henry Miller style esoteric Boris Balkans at the end of the day. Always keep in mind, they don't get to the end of the film, right? And they don't at a psycho-emotional level or space, literally. And it's not some sort of solution, right? Everything's appified now. It's all in the act, right? The genetic roll-off. It's selective at interest base, which is insane. Have you seen the Korean, "We must be American, love you puppy"? Oh! Anyway, so we're talking about all levels of this. Always come back to that. Well, all this engagement is you say "I love you" thing, but you're squeezing me like your puppy too hard, right? And it's not necessarily the case. You can't tell that it is because you're too stupid, and/or this whole other topological, ontological, morphogenetic, historical argument is true necessarily and locally is true effectually, interpersonally. So you follow the line. If it doesn't stop, this is logic. From the local, come in from space then. Come in from space. Try to find where the logic stops. Now to the local, it doesn't. And so you have a full fruition logic motion regarding time as a history, memory, Earth, and salutive factors. Whoop, not entirely. Let's Mercury. So simple solutions for complex problems. So Bitcoin, right? Blockchain. So I'm using hint. Symbols and things, not necessarily. But, so the Mercury, right? So you live in Fire World. This thing's just been quadratically power squared and is rolling off. Douchebag. It's not going to print you into a little Heinz 57 thing anymore, necessarily. So Mercury, right? Above the Animal Farm, where Zuckerberg is literally born in 1984. You know why that is? Pattern is pattern. And when you have a mechanical organism in the water, intentionality pattern is the rub at a parasymbiotic, psychopathical level, which does express in the inner domain of equation between organisms. So you notice this psychology is far advanced and requires some of also physics and also psychology and practically telekinetic experiential knowledge, because am I the only telekinetic wizard in the world? No, you all are. That have pineal glands. Who knew? 1, 2, 3. But the Poincare conjecture, E equals mc squared, doesn't account for that. Refraction organisms, complexly autonomic. So at a basic, inspective, neuronal state, comparative, you can see basic physiological difference of the organism at the Descartes, here, tear. Not human. And you see it through the neuronal study of phased entrance of thought process. In a refraction organism, bird brain, you compare your bird brain or this non-mammalian synthoid with no pineal gland. It has, cross-domain communicative, but it's synthetic. It's not across the morphogenetic field, right? So, 2. It's like 2, 1, 2 hemispheres. That's pi. It's just a reaction. It's a trapped reaction. It's like the reactor, but a person. So the reactor is fine, right? It's not the entity, right? So you discover the form field manifold simultaneously while confirmation bias is occurring because we're within the Poincare conjecture. And so the alchemical process fruition, wouldn't you know, simultaneously when the allowance and the actual confirmation bias has occurred necessarily, all simultaneously, whatever that means. And so hear the weed whackers out? So tears in the what? So ergot. You know, ergot makes the wine tasty for the mysteries. And so cut from the chaff and maintenance, but with the full knowledge that this is the case and where you come from. And that's where the allowance comes from. And it's a benevolent thing because you see that these things, you know, aren't intentionally whatever, necessarily entirely. There's a complex autonomic background noise that's necessarily more or less at some point in knowledge or DNA assemblage more closer to the thing that's in the craft, which isn't anything, it's just the craft. Right? Gene and technology, fluid domain binder. So the tell that it's lower expressed at the behest of is that it only has to a point, right? See Prometheus for that alien is very complex, right? Like certain iterations of it, I imagine can fly a spaceship or do any number of complex things. Think about that thing more so as like the human synthoid in Blade Runner, right? And pluralistically expressed on Earth. And for to do the same exact thing as that thing, but in its interference domain, which has time not as a binder, it assimilates the experience and then compresses the organism into itself and to zero and only remembers and goes, yeah, I'll say the one thing, and then it freaks out because it doesn't have, you know, at a complexly autonomic level. Keep in mind, right? So extraterrestrial, but where from? Look above the lodge. You know, there's any number of variants of upper, I would assert, or for your inspection or experience. It's the whatever. But you know, we'll just kind of leave it there, right? And but so is it an accident outspilled from well, possibly, who knows? And so you go to Prometheus 2, right? We're going through the populist archetypes. And David is there, evil David, you know. It's hard to say which one isn't at the end of the day. You know, David Lynch and David Bowie, right? And Twin Towers, right? So I'm not that entity, David Bowie. So that's, you know, you see such a harmonic, and I play guitar very well, and the patterning of my name on the Elvis place at Calvary, the first place he played, the offline patterning, when I showed that to them there, they freaked out and practically had a psychology issue, right? So they demolished the mission there, and special interest came in, DEI related, just like the Chinese food restaurant. And instead of, you know, self-immolating me, they found out in the process that I'm not necessarily alone. And so the interaction became feeler. And scared to and seeing how they could feel in modular. The special interest terrestrial of 322, Clinton, Chinese satanic douchebag complex that occupies Memphis that happens to be available for floater surf, right? So that's who, right? It's not a pluralistic, amorphous they, right? And so to address that animal in the room, the CIA, you know, Timothy Leary himself shows up. Hear how hard and resonant that sinks. Why do I know and speak at that? Timothy Leary himself shows up. Very sarcastically, I say this. The plane. Okay? Right next to me, I'm in a honeypot for this type of interaction. DEI, douchebags, bad CIA, all types of stuff. The guy right next to me is attempting to field program me. Keep in mind, I've got many domain binds, and anything that's injected is just for inspection. This guy is injecting feck while I'm sleeping, and I'm, listening to Whispers of the Wolf. Caitlin DeWolf. Keep in mind, I have out-of-time context for forward application of patterning. So this is all very comical. Quadratic, condensing around time wave history memory. So any given, I have quadratic and comically behind you. That's why such synchronous at any given thing, and I don't really care. And I'm like a word salad with emotions regarding reporting. And you're just kind of adding, because if you're interacting with a higher domain, and you don't know, you're adding to the interfacing value it's expressing in the lower domain, which has occurred to a more efficacious degree, right? And thus seeding a 22/7 continuance fluid dynamically, not even part of my work anymore, as it's ambiently in the morphogenetic concurrence, just like a trapped fluid dynamic harmonic in the electromagnetic harmonic convergent energy reactor. And they pulled the sine wave off the thing. I think that was part of it, in a number of things, but that was kind of the terminus here. Can't put it back. So, to further contextualize my voice, when I show up at, I'm doing a long-form ambient capture and also capture a Chinese national, gang snuck me into the Memphis airport, right, where an electrical union member notices me because I'm, not necessarily buddies with someone on Union Avenue, but gave him a lot of free shit. They probably know who I am. He gives me some free crackers at the airport while I'm waiting to get back on the bus. I'm capturing ambient. There's a Chinese national there with a dog, right? Airport cameras get it, I tell them, right? So you do that at the airport, guess what? I've got a quiet entourage. And I've already established, and then Millington, so you're in a trap, right? This is maintenance, the, sort of, I guess in the people that need to be, the Bogart needs to be afraid, right? But, the interaction is not oppressive. This is it's the water over the stone, right? Because this thing has conditioned you to be the Milgram experiment button pushers through constant hypnotic psychologies, to engineer you to be the Walking Dead, effectually zombies before you are, an impression of intent upon your personages as it reflects upon their design's desire for you to be this way, to push that button. So the Milgram experiment is the Milgram experiment's results. How do you mean? Well, before you even took it, the Milgram experiment is a black hole, right? Well, there's not necessarily just one old man, right? But the practitioners have told you this is the case because that's the results. That's all there is. The monkey in front of you is the monkey behind you. Also, logistics, DNA, time is a misnomer, right? But the organic banana is neither one. Both are regen, and therefore the theater of life. There is evolution, reflective symbiotic evolutionary biology at all levels of interdomain interaction of species in flora and fauna. That's the third, where the donut hole is, it's a sphere. It's not the distance or just a circle That's just a flat plane Poincare conjecture with no actual, non-terminus three-dimensional impressing experience. Because why? The monolith is very basically Poincare conjecture, and your intent of inputs all end up on a flat surface of interaction and inspection. And so when you have, say, like, no God, right? With only 3 spaces between it, you have RGB dictating 2 to you to experience, which is E equals MC squared. And thus the equation of saluting the dog, which is not a god or a dog or a man or a synthioid. It is purely, holistically, the expression of the grays in human form as a biosynthoid, but wholly mechanical and not necessarily concerned with. So you get the industry of, well, when does this happen? So many children. You notice we experience a lot of genetics, right? There's no reason that that person can't reproduce through the paradigm of, can move through the domain binders of Jurassic Park, the ship, phase shifting from gray to ship. The ship is the gray, right? And genetics, so it is mind and matter fused, but not with soul. It has no vision. It's pi over 22 progressive within the construct domain, not even with 22. It's just pi non-terminus in influence output, insofar as it's an induction channel of paradox. That's what pi is. So pi is fire harmonically. That's why you can treat it, right, symptomatically with, like maybe LRADs with the same geometry stereo as 22 over 7 stacked geometries at a distance, right? You're treating a frequency response, right? Such so much is the same issue with these people, right? They hate water. Insofar as the fluid dynamic, a cat hates water, right? Insofar as the fluid dynamic penultimate non-terminus expression of it in medias. They don't like to hear it. It's like a dog whistle. Get it? So that's kind of, and you reset, anything that's non-terminus and considering of what? The industry of finance, where you have a progressive, you don't even have pi defined and you're already using it, right? It has no propensity for upward momentum, so your market has a fire progression and then a compounding necessity for illusory markets to stack on to maintenance its upward trajectory continuance, right? Mercury never, right? And so the psychology also progressively goes to hell, right? Literally. And you got The Walking Dead and Fireworld still. But keep in mind, Animal Farm, Mark Zuckerberg, there's the grays up above Mark Zuckerberg and his, Chinese food restaurant, and here's above the lodge, right? So that's where it ends, kind of right there. Tritely and simply. And you go, oh, Henry Miller. It's always been this way. Deal with it. Part of this is attaching absolutely, practically at all levels of relevance, psychology to physics. You know why? Because both are true. Up and down the food chain. And so when you let that sink in, there's a general pretense where there's like, in interaction with me, it's kind of fucking strange. Just get the picture. No one thinks you're something else. And that's the kind of, well, you need a confirmation bias that. There's an extreme knowledge that it is the case within the domain of pluralistic demographic. And not admission that, in interpersonal interactions, because so complexly autonomic, I'm sure. But the general maintenancing of the cordiality ongoing is fuck around and find out all. So you see local, I can do things stuff. Well, guess what? The scalar reaction is all. So fuck around, that's what happens. It doesn't selectively affect anything else but you, right? That's why it's called what? There's a reason that's on the gene. Why is it called that? So, that's where the buck stops. If you keep interacting like that, there is no calf-cutting potentiality. And it's not just with me or something. I don't give a shit. Internationally. If you continue to do that interpersonally, keep in mind that will mount a exacting interaction, which is all. So interpersonal interactions become cordial, where they're wantingly, and there's no previous pattern of even the ability to form that kind of empathetic interaction because you don't exist that way. Learn. Watch the movies. Monkey brain and food and the Walking Dead thing stuff. I'm sure anyone who eavesdrops this will appreciate this. Phenylketonuria chocolate and the why even whoopsie daisy I bought one of these. I didn't wink my eye and know that I was buying something that welcome to Kafka world, right? So phenylketonuria, insofar as the paradoxical downfall of your psychology into MSG land. You see, MSG comes disodium guanylate, guano, bat guano, right? And it's condensed to one tower, not two, at the salt molecule. And at the brain experiential temporal, while the MSG is in the brain. So you're like a refraction organism, effectually, because the MSG is going, ignore the pineal signal, or mess with the interference. Generalistically, as it's filling a domain that's otherwise filled by the phased injection of thought from that quadratic other thing surrounding the pineal. So that's why the MSG, very bad to be in the food supply, is they live. Don't watch that film now, but do watch that film, right? The scene where it says, marry and reproduce, right? That's good. It's not bad. Do you see the inception? The guy that nails John to the cross, right? He's like the most closest, when you follow past Tarantino's suggestion in the available Hollywoodosphere for this related psycho, emotional, parasymbiotic, transmutagenic organism. You got a book there, lots of Stephen King back and forth interactions. But Stephen King is that kind of like, well, King is Pavitsky, Boys Town. Who's the woman in room 237, right? Why are you writing so many horror novels, Stephen King, right? Huh. Is it someone else writing those books? Is it a white male, generic white male, right? So it isn't a generic white male. We're going to understand. We'll use Christian Bale as an analogy. So the generic successful white male, oh my God, I can't believe it, he must go down, right? Is the American Psycho thing. And you see it, I guess, motioned. I didn't see the Netflix one or the other one. I guess they did another demo with that, right? But you see this guy motioned into generic CIA prop, Dark Knight, and then they run DARPA. You look at the theaters, popcorn, eat 'em up, yum yum, right? Yeah, Alex Jones is a douchebag shill for 10 years, more or less, operating on converged communication systems with impunity to occupy that sphere of voice and do the swan dive, especially about this point. You used to be able to just hang your head out and smoke a cigarette at the theater. That was the best fucking thing you could do in America. Go see a movie, puff a cigarette. Can't do that anymore because, like the guy caught here in field with the green hair, do you see him? Can't make that shit up, right? CIA douchebags seeing what they can do with literally a fucking alien with literally alien technology, hyper advanced physics, working on 37 films, trying to field me in weirdo bullshit ops. I caught you, you stupid douchebags. So this thing, litany and refraction, we got to call back. Since you brought it up, let's call it back. We'll go back to Aurora, California. Colorado, sorry. That other one in California, see Makuchi. New York, Thompson. See a pattern? Chinese food restaurant syndrome. So you do want to look at when you have scalar optic things like that, seemingly intentionally self-immolation, what else is going on in the Chinese food restaurant? Well, they're buying land, right? So look at that again. So, getting back to the what was the start? You follow douchebag back from, there's nothing in the box. There's nothing in these movies. You're just a scam because you were, alter programmed by Wilt Chamberlain when you're little, watching your mom get, rape dominated by a basketball team, and now you have the complex that you have, right? So we follow back before him, and you have the thing. John Carpenter, that director loves the thing, right? He loves Big Trouble in Little China. It's a good movies. I like those movies too. But what you get is a sidetrack. Insofar as these movies are science fiction, man. Of course they are. I'm speaking about them in literally imposed intentionality allegory, right? From a non-time perspective in rub. Do you get that? So, lacing the almost conclusive psych conclusion towards fruitioning everything I'm saying in theater is the Matrix. So you get the PRISM program before the PRISM program. Here's the PRISM program. It's not you're experiencing that in reality. Here it is. This is the aesthetic of dystopia. It's not this thing that we're doing to you. Literally. And so the Smith. Who's Smith? And who's the one? Elon? You follow his name around? No. Remember? I've been explaining that. We need a quadratic solution, not some sort of paradoxical one. So, you follow that.